Good morning, everybody. Let the church say amen. Let the church say amen. And one more time, let the church say amen. I am so grateful to be here this morning. Again, I say that because it's always in my heart to let you know just how pleased I am to be here, to be able to give God's word. This morning, the lesson is going to come from Genesis 22, which what we read in our for our responsive reading. That's one reason why you don't have to stand for the reading. I'm going to try to integrate that into everything I do as far as our responsive word is give you an idea where we're coming from for our lessons. That way you don't have to be jumping up and down, sitting up and down every time we say something. I don't have a problem with, but I know how it is sometimes for some of us. Okay, Genesis 22, you know what the story is all about, or do you? What is the story of Isaac and Abraham and Isaac? Just, what is it? Anybody got an idea just off the top of their head? Faith and obedience. That's basically what it's all about. And we're speaking out of Genesis 22, talking about faith. But first of all, before we go into the scriptures, I want to say this from Hebrews 11:1. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And a lot of us have a problem with that. And I told you this morning that the question that was asked about the non-believer in the Sunday school lesson, I was going to bring you a situation about that. It's a story about a young man who I had met, and he was telling me that he had lost a friend. Well, a friend of his had got shot, and he ended up dying. So when he looked at me, I asked him, I said, what's wrong with you? He says, well, my friend got shot and he died. And I says, well, when he got shot, I said, what did you do? He said, well, I was just hoping and believing that, he was going to be okay and that he would be able to make it. Because normally when, we get shot, it's just a little shot and we get taken care of and everything's all right. I said, well, what happened? He says, well, evidently it just didn't work and he died. I said, so what do you believe? And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, do you have any faith? He says, well, faith in what? I said, well, do you have faith in God? He says, well, no. He says, what is faith in God? I says, well, what do you believe? When you believe in that he was going to be okay and that he was going to make it, I says, what were you thinking about? What were you believing in? He said, I was just believing in the fact that everything was going to be okay. I said, well, that's probably why everything did not turn out okay. See, because you had a belief in something that you didn't even know what it was. I said, but if you would have said you had faith and you believed in God, I said, I could believe that and understand that you have something that you could sink your teeth into. I said, but you were sinking your teeth into what you thought. I said, what you thought, it wasn't going to help your friend. I said, but if you had God in it, I said, then things would be different. He says, well, what do you mean? He says, I believe. I said, yes, there's a difference between believing and having faith. I can believe in my car and not have faith that it's going to start. Okay? I mean, I can have faith in something, but if I got faith in it, I have to believe it. So if I got God in the middle of all of this and my faith is in God, that means I believe in what God is going to do because I have the faith that he's going to do it. Because that's what the Bible tells me. So it's easy for me to tell this young man the reason that he had a problem dealing with the issue was because he wasn't looking at God. He was looking at himself and what he had been through and what his friends had gone through and what they had saw. And I was trying to get him to understand, and he couldn't grasp it good enough. So I had to bring him down and bring him into something else. So he asked me, he says, well, if you got faith in God, he says, how do you know that God is going to take care of you? How do you know that God is going to save you? How do you know that? I said, because I got faith in it and I can believe in it. I said, and I can take you into the Bible and I can give you some scriptures. He said, well, what kind of scriptures can you give me? I said, I don't walk by sight. I said, I walk by faith. I said, and that's in the Bible. We walk by faith, not by sight. He says, well, what does that mean? I said, I got faith in knowing that when I take my next step, everything is going to be okay. I said, even if I see that there's a rock or a tree limb or something in the way that I might stumble and fall on, I don't worry about what I'm seeing. I'm going by what I'm feeling and what's in me. It's saying to me, keep moving. Don't worry about what's in front of you. That obstacle is not going to stop you. So the young man, he says, I kind of understand that. He says, but that really is not telling me what I really want to see. I said, okay, well, I'll give you some other ones. So I gave him James 2:22. It says, and this is from the Message Bible, it says, isn't it obvious that faith and works are yoked partners, meaning that they work together? Because faith expresses itself in your works. I said, in the works are works of faith. He says, well, what's works of faith? I said, do you believe in prayer? He says, well, I pray. I said, well, who do you pray to? He says, well, I just pray because that's what mom and them always say, when you're in trouble, pray. I said, well, that's true. I said, but you got to know who you praying to. I said, because if you praying to the wrong something, then ain't nothing good going to happen to you. I said, so you got to pray. And I said, and your prayer is a work of faith. Because if you're going to God with a prayer, you ain't just standing up there thinking about it. You are praying. Praying is an action word. You must do something when it comes to prayer. You can't just think of your prayer in your mind. That's a good thing to do, but you still have to speak it into existence. God will not help you unless you let him know that you need the help. Don't get me wrong. He already knows that you need the help, but what he's waiting for is for you to say, God, help me. Because that shows him that you revere him, that you have faith in him, you trust him, you believe in him. So the young man was looking at me. He said, you're getting a little excited about this, ain't you? I said, man, don't you understand that your friend could be in heaven today if he knew God? I said, here's something I want you to think about. I said, do you listen to when people talk to you or when things come up in your mind? He says, well, I don't follow what you're saying. I said, okay, here's something. When you went to go do what you and your friend did and he got shot, I said, did something in the back of your mind tell you that this is wrong or that you should do something else, not to follow this guy? Or were you the one leading it? He said, I felt that, it might have been wrong, but they had did something to our people. So I said, see, then that was you. When you heard that thought, I said, that was what God was trying to tell you then. Young man, wake up. This is the wrong path you're taking. I need you to step back and look at the situation. And he said, I hesitated when they said, let's go do this. I said, well, see, you didn't follow your first mind. I said, God is speaking to you right now. I said, God been telling you for the longest that you've been living the wrong way. He says, well, what is that supposed to mean when you're coming from the Bible? I said, well, let me tell you this. That's when I got to Isaac and Abraham. And we know the story. God had already told Abraham, even though he didn't have any children, he was going to have an heir and that he was going to have people that were going to be counted amongst the stars, that he would not be able to count them all. But when Isaac finally came here and he got with that age where he was able to do some things and really help his dad out and go forth and start learning, God told Abraham, that's what I told the young man, God spoke to him and said, hey, I want you to take your son. I want you to make him a sacrifice to me. The young man looked at me. He said, wait a minute. He said, he asked him to take his son. What's the sacrifice? I said, he had to kill him for God. He said, no, man, he ain't supposed to do that. I said, wait a minute, hold up. I said, God told him to do this. I said, just like he told you that you wasn't supposed to go with that boy when you did what you did. But you went. I said, but Abraham did something different. He took his son where God told him to take him. He made everything the way it was supposed to be. He bound his son up. He put him on the altar. He was getting ready to do it. And another voice came out and said, Abraham, here's your ram in the bush. Don't worry about that. Take your son. But see, the thing was, then the young man says, well, how come he listened to God? I said, because see, you got to understand, when God is in your heart and he's speaking to you, you're going to pay attention. Because when he tells you something, you're going to follow it if you believe it. He says, but this man was going to kill his son. I said, yeah, but God didn't let him kill him, did he? I said, remember what he said? He had promised him he was going to give him an heir. He was going to give him, his family was going to grow. I said, God did that before he even had the son. I said, but then later on in life, he told him he wanted to kill him. He said, he said, well, why would he have done that? God wanted to test him. He wanted to see if he was faithful. Just like I want to see if you're faithful. If you're faithful to God, that means that you can accept him in your heart right now. And anything he tells you to do, you're going to do it and you know everything's going to be all right. He says, well, what happened to Isaac? I said, nothing happened to Isaac. He did just what God said he was going to do. He had children and his people were everywhere. I said, but here's the thing. The promise was made to Abraham to follow. Abraham followed the letter of the law. I said, with you, young man, you have to learn, you have to follow the letter of the law. I said, but he's telling me, I don't understand how I'm going to follow the law and I'm supposed to follow God. I said, see, because if you follow God, you're going to automatically follow the law. Because God is going to have you doing what's right. You ain't going to have to go around worry about carrying a gun or sticking somebody up or fighting because your friend got shot. I said, that's not what it's all about. Faith is what you got to have in order for you to live a different life. You got to do something different in order for you to be different. I said, if you got faith in God, you can put all of this mess that you're doing down and you can walk a better life. And he looked at me and he said, how can I believe you? And I looked at him in his face and I told him straight up, young man, I have been where you are. The only thing I didn't do that you've done was get shot. I said, and that was only by the grace of God that I didn't get shot because I was in this middle of all of the mess where I could have been shot plenty times. I said, but I believe in God and I had faith and I listened. When something scared me, I followed what it said. Move, run, leave. Don't do this. You don't. You want to be tough, proud, stand out and let everybody see that you about something. I said, but what they seeing is ignorance because you don't know what you're doing is wrong. Follow what God is trying to tell you. He says, well, I go to the funeral and I hear them talk about, and trust me, we've been having some funerals here in Kilgore in the last few weeks. Just had one Friday. And the people, I look at them, when the preacher says it's time for you to get right, it's amazing to see how many people in the church really ain't right. And you can tell in their face when the preacher says it if you look at them. Because most people, when the preacher says, y'all better get right, you know how we are. Oh, we ready. Everything's okay with us. You see people with quiz, they got a question on their face like, get ready. Get ready for what? Get ready for this. Because this is where you're getting ready to go. But the thing is, that's going to be your body. Where's your soul going to be at? Are you evil or are you for God? One or the other. You can't stay in the middle. Well, I know what we can do. We can go ahead and just stop all this gangbanging. I said, that'd be a great idea. But here's the key to it. If you stop, you got to stop everybody else too. Because if you become God's child, what do? And he didn't know anything. And I knew he didn't. I just wanted to ask him. He says, well, I don't know what I do. I said, you get your friends to follow along with what you're doing. Trying to change their lives. Well, what if they don't do it? Well, the same thing. I'm talking to you. Are you going to do it? He said, well, I'm thinking about it. I said, maybe they'll think too if you tell them. I said, because I sit in your seat. I said, and now you're sitting in a place where you're going to be looking just like this guy down here, your friend, laid out, unless you do what? He says, well, I got to change. I said, okay, I want you to listen to something else. And this is when I took him. This is the Message Bible version of Hebrews 11:1. It says, the fundamental fact of existence is that this trust in God, this faith, is the firm foundation under everything that makes life worth living. It's our handle on what we can't see. This gives you the handle to let you know there is so much going on around you. You can't see it, but if you got God, you got a handle on it. Why? Because he will direct your path. He will make sure that you follow what it is that you have to follow. If you give yourself to him and you have what it is called faith, you got faith the size of a mustard seed. Now, I've seen a mustard seed and them are the littlest seeds in the world, but they make some of the biggest plants you ever want to see grow. I said it to the young man, if you want to change, give yourself to God. I said, if you want to see change, give yourself to God. If you want your life to change around you, give yourself to God. Pray all the time and ask him to open up your mind to see the truth. Most young men today, and the reason that I'm preaching this sermon to you today is because I don't have to tell you what it is about faith. All I have to do is remind you every now and then that you got to have faith and you got to work your faith. You already know exactly what it is. But when people don't have it at all, these young kids that we're talking to, some of them we can't reach. But God can reach everybody in all kinds of ways. So if you see a young man with his pants sagging and he walking around looking like he a gangster, just say, Lord, I'm going to pray for this young man. And if you get a chance to say something to him, just let him know. You ain't got to say, man, pull your pants up, because that makes it even worse. Just tell him, young man, I'm praying for you. That's all you got to do. Because if they ask the question, well, why are you praying for me? You got them. captive audience because God loves you and he wants to see you change. Then you can tell him to pull his pants up. Open his mind up to the reality of what it is he has to deal with first before you condemn him. You cannot condemn a person and raise them up at the same time. It just won't work because you can only have one thought in your mind at the same time. So if you see a bad situation and you got something that you can give them what you got. That's why I say when my cup runneth over or yours run over, I love to be the saucer because I want to pick up all of them blessings that's coming out, because some of them blessings are designated for somebody. It's just that we don't know. But God's picture, he knows. So who's ever around your cup, trust me, those blessings flow over. And this is what I want you to go. I'm going to end this Genesis 15 and 6. I want one person to get 15 and 6. I want one person to get Romans 4 and 3. I want somebody to go to Galatians 3 and 6. And also James 2 and 23. And the reason that I'm giving you all of these is because they all say the same thing. And now what this is in reference to is that we're talking about that God is telling Abraham that he can look forward to the heavens and the stars, and they're not going to be able to number them. And verse 6, it says this, and he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Here's another version of that. And he believed God. God declared him set right with God. Now, Romans 4 and 3, Galatians 3 and 6, James 2 and 23, all reference Genesis 15 and 6. And the reason for that being is because they want everybody to understand and everybody to know it's the faith that you must hold on to. Because Abraham believed, and that in itself is the reason for this lesson. Because he believed, he had faith. He didn't do what we would have done. Would you have took your son up to kill him today? Could you do that? If something came to your heart right now and just told you, take your son up to the hills and set him on fire for me, would you? Would you question it? Yes. Sure. Would you talk to God? Yes. What would you ask him? Why? And why would you ask him why? If he told you what to do and he's your daddy, do you question your daddy like that? It's not up to us to question why. Our only thing to do is to follow and obey. God will never take you to a situation where it's going to be tumultuous or hurtful for you without giving you a way out. Look at what he did with Isaac. Abraham did exactly what he wanted him to do. Take him right on up there and set him up for that offering. He did that, even though he did not want to. And in his heart, it was killing him to think that he's got to take his only son and take him up there to kill him after he done told me that I'm going to have all of this and these promises that you made, but this is what I got to do. He didn't care about all of that. He was caring about his son, but he put forth, and this is what I love this Bible here. It says the African Heritage Bible. It says, oh, wait a minute. Let me go back to the right page. It says, this was Abraham's supreme test of faith and a very significant point in his relationship with God. It was at this juncture that Abraham proved that his love for and obedience to God was greater than the love for his son, whom he had long desired and prayed for. But by his obedience, he reaffirmed his commitment to God. In turn, God reconfirmed the blessing to him and his seed forever. Now, here's my question to you. Do you believe in God enough to follow whatever it is that he tells you to do? Now, don't just say this lightly, because, see, a lot of us, what did we talk about not too long ago? What are the things that we won't bring to God? Things that we'll hide from God. Remember we talked about that last Sunday? Now, this is something right here that we really have to deal with, because you're taking this from your heart. We're talking about your blood. We're talking about your family. If God tells you to do this, will you follow him? I don't need for you to answer it. That's between you and God. But I want you to remember this. If you got faith in him and you believe in him and you trust in him and he has kept you this far, why wouldn't he continue to keep you regardless of what he asks you to do?